Hey, welcome to episode 53 of Rooted in Wisdom, a daily dose of Donna. Today, I am sharing with you this idea of the contrast or comparison of the power of persuasion versus the impact of influence. So, if you're wondering, by the time we get to the end of this, you will know that influence is way more powerful for long-term sustainable outcomes in any relationship versus the power of persuasion. Now, I grew up in sales from a very young age and spent many years in sales. And what I learned in sales was the power of persuasion. And if you missed yesterday's episode number 52, you can go back and I talked a little bit about persuasion and influence in there. So while I hadn't really intended on building on that today, this is what came up. And the reason that I want to talk about and share with you influence versus persuasion is because when we are able in communication, whether it is in business agreements or in our personal lives, no matter where it is, when we are able to have this intrinsic, meaning this internal influence versus external forces, forcing change on us, the outcomes are long term and they're much more sustainable. So let me tell you what I mean. So persuasion could really be likened to manipulation. And the reason that it can be seen as manipulation, either perceived as manipulation or just the actual process of persuasion, is that it's an external force influencing someone else or some outcome. So in sales, in anything, right? It's kind of like in parenting, right? It's like the carrot and the stick kind of thing. So it's what are we using to entice someone to draw them toward this outcome that we desire. That is what persuasion is, right? We're making it attractive enough, enticing enough that they want to follow you, right? It's like holding, the piece of meat for the dog or the dog treat, right? So they smell it, they see it, they're salivating, they want it, they will follow you anywhere. Well, that the challenge with that though is that it's not sustainable, because as soon as you give it to the dog or you get rid of it, the dog goes away, right? So that, and what I mean by that, what that means is that it's not sustainable. So your relationship with that animal is not sustainable. So when we are in a sales relationship or some kind of contractual relationship that we have built the relationship on this poor foundation of persuasion, when we no longer have that attractive buy-in, it dilutes over time if you're not continuing to build value and give more and more and more and more, which can be freaking exhausting. And in business, it can be expensive. And that could be in the form of having to do advertising or doing giveaways, or giving more perks in a contract, giving more time, more services, whatever that is, and that can get expensive because it's eating up time, but it's also eating up other financial resources. So persuasion becomes a form of manipulation because we're using external forces to get the behavior or the outcome that we desire. In contrast, the power of influence, how we can make a bigger impact with influence because it is sustainable, is because it's coming in from internally, intrinsically. So how do we get another individual to cooperate with us in influence? Well, the more we understand what motivates them, then the more influence we have. So I was kind of reminded about this today as um, I just hired a girl to work with me, and uh, being mindful of this and wanting to have the best sustainable relationship, looking at what does she value, right? Not just in work, right? But what values are important to her, her core value system, but also in a work relationship, in an external relationship, not just the relationship she has with herself and the things that are part of her core values. And in that, when we're identifying those core values, those things that are motivating people, and we can match that in an outcome that we're wanting to move someone to be in relationship with us, and whatever that is, right? Buying our product or service, being in an intimate relationship with us, getting cooperation from our spouse, our children, whatever, our neighbor. Maybe you're having at odds with your neighbor and you're wanting to influence them, not persuade them, to create some kind of change, to create a more peaceful environment in the community, whatever those things are. So, now damn it, what was I saying? So, oh yeah, something about influence and intrinsic and values and all of that, right? So, when we're able to speak to and accommodate the things that people value most, and we can always do that no matter what it is, then we are building a strong foundation in that relationship, and that's always something that we could, it's the piece that we can always come back to, where it's that foundation, it was those core values, those things that matter most to that person, and I'm finding those commonalities, say, within me, so that that's what we're building on. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of other pieces to it, right? But when we're talking about what do we need to do to have a sustainable relationship, it is about influence versus persuasion. It's about those intrinsic aspects and pulling those things out of that other person versus forcing them by enticing or commanding and demanding or whatever that is. So, and the way that becomes a win all across the board for everyone, one, from a resource perspective, it's less energy. So, energetically in the relationship, it's more in flow, and there's less energy to maintain the relationship because you have to keep working at it, right? Because there's not congruency in the values. There's only your values, and you're trying to get them to align with yours, and you have to do that through manipulative practices. And when I say manipulation, it's not necessarily that you're I mean, it's egoic. I mean, that's a given, right? So it's very ego driven versus very servant centered. Um, but besides that, it doesn't mean that it's coming from a malicious intent. So when I say manipulation, it doesn't mean that there's some harm being done necessarily. Um, so, but with influence, we can make a bigger impact because we now have more resources available. We're only working with the resources that are coming from the mutual energy. And so you're not doing all that extra time and money maintaining the relationship, but energetic from an energy perspective, like your physical energy, you're using less energy that way as well, which allows you then to have more energy to create, build other relationships through influence, and so can they. And when we're talking about in a work relationship or any kind of a partnership, um, then there's more energy to pay attention to each other in that relationship and have more energy for those things outside that relationship, which is just healthier all the way around, which is much more sustainable. So wouldn't you rather have relationships that are founded on making an impact with influence versus the power of persuasion? I mean, just the wording in itself, right? The power. I mean, that already just comes from ego and sounds forceful. And yeah, I'm kind of really reading into that. But words have meaning, and impact is better than power, said Donna Nelson. So, all right. So that is my lesson for Rooted in Wisdom tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow.